So in this video, I'd like to dive deep into internals of CPython and find answer to question how Python handles comparison of two different types, specifically an integer to a float. So when we are comparing an int to a float, what happens behind the scenes? Because if you see, it's even if the two types are different, right, but their underlying value could be actually same. So 10.0 as a float value is actually same as 10 as an integer value, right? So with other types you can like directly discard and say that one is a dictionary, another one is set, so those two can't be equal. But with this we'd have to actually go through the values and find out if they are equal or not to justify our answer, or to justify the to justify the final value that we are getting, right? So if it's true, it's true, if it's false, it's false, right? But why? So this is a very interesting problem. Let's see how Python does it. So in order to point to the right code where the main logic would happen, we'll use our favorite tool, which is disassembler, and try to find out what happens. I'll do an import dis and see the instructions that runs behind the scenes when I do 10.0 double equal to 10, right? So if I run this, we get we primarily get four instructions out of it. Two are load const, which are basically loading 10.0 and 10. Then there is this compare op, which actually performs the comparison. So what we'll do it is, all the magic happens when this particular instruction is executed. So let me close this thing. In order to find out what happens when the compare operation works, all the execution or all the instructions or all the code that needs to be executed upon seeing an instruction like compare op is written in C eval, and here what we'll look for is compare op. So on the line 3596 or basically somewhere similar, we would find the actual code that gets executed when Python encounters, or when Python runtime encounters this particular instruction. So what it does is, it is extracting the top of the stack and storing it in right, which is the right operand. Then it is accessing the top of the stack, storing it in left. So it primarily got the right operand and the left operand. And then what it did is, it is calling PyObject underscore rich compare, passing in the left argument, the right argument, and the operator here, right? And then once it gets the result, it is setting it on the top, right? As simple as that. So all the magic happens. So with PyObject underscore rich compare, in which the code of actual comparisons depending on the operator should be written. So let's go within this and see what's happening. So what it does is some checks, thread checks and all, bad internal call, that's okay. Yeah, here it is. What this function does is, internally it invokes another function which is called do underscore rich compare, which pass in some state, a v and a w. So v and w are basically left and the right operand and the operator. So it pass in the left operand, the right operand and the operator along with some state onto this function do rich compare, and it basically takes out the returned value, and it basically does the return. So let's go into do rich compare and see what it does. So do rich compare has the arguments and all. So it has this rich compare func f. So this rich compare func f looks like a function pointer. Like it is a function pointer that accepts two PyObjects and an integer, and it returns a PyObject. Fine. So this is how Python handles. So it must have implemented a function with the same signature for all the types that are there, and depending on the type which is passed to this function, it would be calling the corresponding compare function of that particular type, right? That is how, or basically that is the intuition behind it. Let's see if this is true or not. Here it is. See, what it does here is, it for one of the operand, let's say it over here it picked w. So for w it got its type, and then it does an arrow. Basically it is trying to access its member called tp underscore rich compare. So looks like tp underscore rich compare is nothing but the member of the set that holds the function pointer, right? And then it is storing in f. If it is not null, then actually invoking that function, right? So if the corresponding thing is set, then only invoke, otherwise obviously if it is null, you can't invoke a null function. So it is storing in f, and then here it is dereferencing it and invoking it. So basically this is where the function invocation is actually happening, right? And then we are getting the value, and this value is being written, right? So this looks like the core logic, and this is evident for other places as well. So other branches of this code, this is very evident. So star f v w o p, star f w v and something, right? One really interesting exercise for you guys could be, we have seen that while calling this do rich compare function, it passed in left argument, right argument and operator. But while invoking this function, in the first case it passed in second argument, so as in the right argument, then left argument and some pi swapped op. In the second branch it did first the left argument, the right argument and then op. In the next one it did wv, so the right, the left and swapped, right? So there seems to be something happening behind the scenes for which it is swapping the positions of left and right. One hint, it happens due to the type for which it is invoking it, but it will be fun to explore why this happens. I would highly encourage you guys to do it as a really fun exercise. It will be fun to explore like why it does it, and obviously there is a very neat optimization that happens behind the scenes, right? So basically coming back to the logic, what we know that there is something called as tp underscore rich compare, which is what we'll see. So we know that we are trying to compare float to int. So let's open float ka file, so float object.c, and let's look out for tp compare rich. Yeah, here it is. So tp compare, in this position there is float underscore rich compare. So this must be the float type object. Indeed it is the float type object, and within which there is this float underscore rich compare function at the place where tp underscore rich compare where the slot of tp underscore rich compare is there, right? So this is where the magic should happen. This is where the code to handle or to compare float to a float or float to int or float to any type would be written. So let's open this. Let's open this thing, and what we found out, yeah, it indeed has the same signature, 2 Python objects and 1 integer for operator, and this is where the entire logic of comparison is written, right? So let's first confirm if this is actually the place where the magic happens, right? So what we'll do is I'll just add a print statement which says that I am in the function float underscore rich compare with arguments %s and %s, and I'll add a /n. So what I'll do is I'd want to print the values of the two operands. So basically I'd want to print v and w, right? So what I'll do is I'll take the pi object wrapper. So I'll basically take the wrapper representation of my object, say v, and then I'll convert this wrapper into pi Unicode as UTF. So pi Unicode as UTF, basically converting it into a const char star, which is a native C type, so because of which I can print it as a %s, like a very simple thing, right? And I'll do it with w as well, right? And now we have this thing. Let me build this thing quickly, and there is a syntax error, so I have to get rid of this and make. Once the code is built, once the binary is baked, what we should see is when we are doing 10.0 equal to 10, we should see 10.0 and 10 being printed over here, right? It already started building while building the binary. Let me quickly open the shell, and just because I am on Windows, I'll have to do this os.clear. You can ignore this part, os.system clear. Yeah. So what I'll do a 10.0 equal to 10, and indeed it printed float rich compare %s and %s. Basically it is trying to compare 10.0 and 10, which is a left argument and the right argument, right? So we are pretty much sure that this is where the core logic is written. And now that we have reached this point, let's start going through this code, and it is indeed really interesting on how Python chose to implement float to int comparison, or basically float to a number comparison, right? So the core of this particular logic lies in the declaration of two variables I and j, right? So what CPython tries to do over here is it converts or it tries to convert the left and the right operand, which is v and w, into two double values I and j, right, and then does a native C comparison between the two, right, because C supports comparison of obviously C supports comparison in its native types, right. So from pi float or a pi object, it converts them into double and then performs the comparison, because at then it's a float value, so it tries to convert it into double and then does the comparison. So that's why it has declared two variables I and j. It has also declared an integer, which is r. So r holds the result of comparison, right. So depending on the comparison or the comparator operator, it would decide or it would store the resultant value in r and then actually convert it into boolean, right. So this logic is written at the end of this function. I'll just we will anyway come back and check the other part, but yeah, let's first quickly wrap this thing. So you can find this thing. So there is this label called compare, in which it actually does a switch on OP. OP is where the operator lies, right. So the operator has an integer value 1, 2, 3 something. Depending on if it is an equal to, it does r equal to I equal to j. If it is not equal to, it does r equal to I not equal to j. If it is less than, greater than, and so on and so forth. And then it is converting it into a pi bool from long. So from the integer value r, it would convert it into a bool, basically true or false, as a final output, right. So now we understand what it is trying to do, right. So I and j is the double, so its job is to convert v and w into double and then perform the comparison, right. So now let's start going through code one by one. It does an assert. So pi float check, it expects it asserts that the first operand, so the first operand, which is v, is a float. If it is not a float, then it does not make sense for us to call this particular function. So it asserts that part. Then it does a pi float as double. So pi float as double is nothing but it actually converts the pi float object into a C native double, right, and it holds it in I. Right, so we can simply add printf I percentage lf slash n, and I'll print I, because since I is a native double, I can like directly print I right here, right. Then basically till this point we have asserted that I is indeed a double, and what we care about is j, right. So now the first case, if w is also a float, right. So what if we are comparing 10.10 to 10.1? So here 10.1 is also float, 10.0 is, oh sorry, we are trying to compare 10.0 to 10.1. So 10.0 is a float, so v is float and 10.1 is float, right. So that is when this particular branch will get executed, right. So if w is also a float, then convert it into a double and store it in j, right. So if both are float, so float here implies a pi float, right. So if both are pi float, then you have I, you have j, and you can directly go to compare. If it is not, there is this error check or some basically far-fetched condition check if pi is finite or not. If it is not, and there are some edge cases here, then comes the next part which we are really keen on, is pi long check, because what we are trying to find out is what happens when we do 10.0 equal to 10, right. So here what it is doing is it is doing this pi long check of w, because in our case the w is going to be an integer. So printf w is pi long. We are just printing it, because once we'll bake this thing into an image, once we'll just bake this thing into a binary and execute, so we should be seeing all of this thing as an output, right. Then what it does is it checks for signs, because that's the next part. So if my v and w have different signs, then comparison becomes really simple, because if they have different signs, those are definitely not equal, right, and we can like directly send them to comparison, right. So if signs are different, then magnitudes are irrelevant, right. We can directly send it to compare. So that's what it is doing. So it is checking for v sign, it is checking for w sign. It has declared few variables which will come to it later, and then it does this thing, right. Then what's next? Then it checks if the number of bits required to represent w, right. So if the number of bits required, so what is pi long underscore num bits? So given an integer, it spits out the minimum number of bits required to hold that integer. For example, if I'm given a number 3, so the number of bits required to represent 3 is 2, right? So it will be like 1 1, right? So this would spit out the number of bits required. So here is a condition check. So if sorry, I just scrolled it right. So here it's the condition check. So if the number of bits required is way too long, right? If it is too big, then it does not make sense to check something, and this is again a wild condition where it has done I is equal to v sign. So it just basically checks for the magnitude of things, and which is what it is doing, right? The most interesting part for us is when a number is representable, right? So if n bits is less than 48, because if we were trying to represent 10 into a number of bits, it would take us 3 and 1 4 bits, right? So the number of bits required to represent 10 is just 4. So what we can directly do is we can directly convert pi long as double, right? So this function converts a pi long object, because what we have asserted before is if w is pi long here with pi long check. So what we are directly doing is we are converting pi long into double and storing it in J and sending it to comparison, right? So if our hypothesis is true, I can directly print that w is small pi long, and we have J is equal to percentage LF slash n, and I'll print J and I'll just paste it over here, right? So after we have converted into this, right? So this is where the point of interest for us lies when we are trying to do 10.0 equal to 10, right? As part of detailed deep dive of this particular logic, things become really interesting once we leave these were the very simple cases that Python handled, right? Interesting cases happen when numbers are too big, when my long is too big, because Python efficiently or basically Python effectively is putting no limits on the size of integer, no limits on size of float. So what happens when our numbers are too big? That's when the core of this algorithm starts, in which we are doing this call, this frexp. Fii is a function defined in Python that gives us exponent of the number of the number which is there, right? So the how floating point numbers are represented, all of those part will come into the picture. If you just skim the part, we can see that it compares fraction part, integer part, does some mod functions, so basically mod of float values and all, to find out which one is big and which one is small. So this part of, or this half of algorithm, or this half of logic would require it separately, otherwise this video would become really big, right? So what I would want to focus more on is the path in which we are interested in, where we are just comparing 10.0 equal to 10 to understand what happens, right? So now that we have put in printf, let's just go through this part and see. I'll just build this thing again so that we can be definitely sure on how this thing happens. So now that this is here, I do Python, and unfortunately because of Windows I have to do this, yeah, and I'll do 10.0 equal to 10. You can see float rich compare 10.0 10, I is 10.0000, w is pi long, w is small and pi long, and j is 10.000. So now what it would do is it has I and j both as double and is doing a native C comparison, right? Really straightforward. And then the other case where we also printed where both the numbers were float. So this is where, so if both the numbers were float, this is where it would come in and would do the check, right? Let's just confirm this flow as well, and what we'll do is I'll print w is pi float, and j is equal to LF and j, right? And let's just quickly build this thing again. And let me quickly clear this os.system clear, and 10.0, 10.1 double equal to 10.2. So now you can see float rich compare 10.1, 10.2, I is 10.10000, W is pi float, J is 10.2000, and it is sent it to comparison, right? So now we understand how this particular flow has taken its path. So for string to int comparison, sorry, not string to, but for float to int comparison, basically this is the function of interest and the kind of path that it has taken, right? So yeah, primarily that is it for this one. If you guys like this video, give this video a thumbs up. If you guys like the content, give this channel a sub, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks a ton.